Welcome to the Great Divide podcast. My name is Mitchell Legg, and I am here with Noel Purdey, who, for once in the podcast history, I've actually met Noel in person. And he models the N-scale West Coast Mining, which is a Australian-based layout. It's up in the Pilbara, isn't it?
Correct.
Yep, that's it.
Yep, up in the Pilbara. Yep. My little bit of the Pilbara.
Yeah. So if you wouldn't mind, Noel, just give us a little bit about yourself and how you got into this.
Yeah, look, thanks for having us on, Mitchell. It's a great opportunity, and yes, as you said, we did actually meet. It was a very funny meeting at the
pub in
Southport Hotel.
Yep.
And you very kindly gave to me some locomotives.
I was wondering if you still had those. Yeah.
Oh yes. They live in my version of the Historical Society, and so a modified SD80, which is now an SD90, and
SD40. Yep, SD40-2.
Two with the long footplate. So
yep.
So yeah, they're still there, and I suppose now, given that you've got out of N-scale, Mitchell, they're a little bit unique.
Yeah, there won't be any more.
Yeah, no, have you still got the ones that any of them or not?
I sold off most of what I had to fund the new HO scale addiction.
Yeah, well, these are very priceless then, aren't they?
Yep, certainly are.
And I noticed tonight when I got this out of the Historical Society on my layout that it's actually 5001 is actually called Ironstone.
Yep. Yeah, so, all the SD80s I ended up naming them after either different minerals or just different companies that the Great Divide would have worked with back then. But yeah, neat little part of history.
It is part of history and a little bit unique and well preserved now. So so thank you for, and they're always going to be here. But anyway, I model Western Australian iron ore mining, or the concept of shifting iron ore over a railroad. The history of iron ore mining in the northwest regions of Western Australia are a bit sort of, some people are happy about it, some people aren't happy about it. And there's a bit of a dispute about who discovered it and all that sort of stuff. But I think most people will agree that Lang Hancock, Gina Reinhardt's father, discovered iron ore, and he noticed that particular trees grew near iron ore outcrops, and then of course magnetic fields got disrupted and those sorts of things, and so one thing led to another, and this is on their family. I don't know what they call it up there. I suppose a spread or range. Their plot, whatever you want to call it, and so they started working, but they also found asbestos, and that's how Witanoom and
I remember that.
Yeah, the famous song "Blue Sky Mining" by who was that? Anyway, it was Blue Sky Mining was the song, and that then got sold on to other parties and that sort of stuff. But then over the years, other people started to develop iron ore mining facilities in the area, and we've always a partnership generally with one of the, like Korean or Japanese, or as it is nowadays, Chinese interests. So, and one of the things I always found difficult was that, when a train of iron ore is 2 kilometres long, it's a bit hard to model that in N scale or even in Z scale. And just hang on 5 seconds. The cat's attacking the door, so just hang on.
No worries. Just,
anyway, he's gone now. He's right. So yeah, I really regarded myself as a concept modeler. I'm modelling the concept of shifting iron ore from point A to point B with the trains. Now, yes, it is a freelance layout. West Coast Mining doesn't exist. When I was exhibiting back in 1979 down here in Melbourne, there was a belief that it was a corporate sponsored layout, which upset some people because I watched some of your other podcasts, Mitchell, and there's lots of things that go into making a freelance layout more believable. Is that if you have the PR that goes with it, that does take on a life of its own. And believe it or not, West Coast mining has been around since 1976. So I'm up to West Coast mining Mark IV, on the verge of Mark IV, and it's had different makeups over the years, and this is the current layout as you can see there. This is the main yard of Port Ronsard, which is a fictional place, and you might notice the F7 sitting in the
yeah. There's a couple of American interlopers just
yes.
Hanging
Well,
around.
I did have this. My modelling friends down here in Melbourne used to. Other N-scale modelers used to say that he who dies with the most trains wins, and I've certainly got my fair collection. But now that I'm sort of getting on a little bit, not that I'm old, but getting retired and all that sort of stuff, I realise there's no value in just buying heaps of locomotives and all that sort of stuff. So, but because what I was going to do, I was going to buy a model of every prototype that ran in the Pilbara.
Oh, so that would have been the Mount Newman.
The F7, Mount Newman F7 unit. So, and yes, you can see some ST70 ACE out of the shed there. And for those that are very astute, you might notice that there's a couple of locos behind the F7 there, which look a bit strange to the uninitiated.
That'll be these.
Yes, which they are a loco which is known as a Pilbara Cab loco. And once again, the Pilbara Cab style of cab of the loco was a very unique piece of infrastructure that was created in consultation with the unions and the drivers and all those sorts of things to make it more comfortable for the drivers. So fully air conditioned, toileting facilities and all that sort of stuff. Because as you can imagine, being in the Pilbara, where it's 40 plus degrees most days of the week. It doesn't take long for the old toilet to get a bit on the nose and cause problems. So the Pilbara Cab was designed and to give better vision as well, and hence the sloping head windscreens on it, which there is no windscreens in those particular models yet. But what they did was they took basic locos and it was the Century locos and Dash 7s and that sort of stuff. And they basically took the nose off the front and created a new cab and also upgraded the loco to, say, a Dash 7 or a Dash 8 infrastructure behind it in terms of the prime mover and the electronics and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, that was Hammersley Iron that led the way on that, wasn't it, with the Pilbara Cab?
Yes. Yeah, and then it flowed over into the Mount Newman or BHP, and then it just sort of grew from there. But then they grew out of favour, and I'm not quite sure why they didn't pursue with it, but they went to more just a standard off-the-shelf cab, but with their own custom design. So when it came time for me to model my locomotives, I thought, geez, what am I going to do? And believe it or not, the cabs on there that you can see, they're all etched brass. So the dynamic housing behind the cab's brass as well, and the flared radiator down the back is brass too, down here. And there's also a brass fuel tank. So I did what the prototype did. I just took the cab off, threw that away, and through a friend of a friend, I got some brass etchings done here in Melbourne, and which is all good and well, but then you have to go and work out how you're going to put it all together. So after many hours of practicing and all that sort of stuff, I set about soldering them all together. And it was quite a complex little thing, but by the end I was an expert at doing it. So and just in case I ever want to do any more, I have kept the jigs and all that sort of stuff. So but this loco is the main chassis for it is a Cato U30C locomotive. So Cato. They've only ever been ran once by Cato back in the, I suppose the late 1990s, and I've got a whole fleet of them, 16, and they all had to be modified. And interestingly, once you put the cab on and the radiator, sorry, not the radiator, the dynamic and the radiator down here, and the fuel tank, the weight gets increased quite considerably. So, which was a positive side effect. And yeah, they're great little machines. The U30 loco that Cato made, it was the benchmark for many of their six-axle models with the split chassis down the middle. And it is just a great loco. It just pulls and pulls and pulls, very reliable, and I do not have much trouble with them at all. So, sorry, the footstep as well was a brass modification there. Yeah. So, and like everything in life, and I just happened to have some here. Here's some I had organised beforehand. I don't know if you can see. Can you see that?
I'll just stop the share for a moment. There we go.
There we go. Yep. So this is the loco that I'm talking about. It comes in many different forms, but I thought, I've got so many, I've got to have a phase of, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3.
Yep.
Just like you do with the GP40s and 38s as, phases. So this particular one, I don't know if it's easy to see, but it's actually dark blue or royal blue on top. And it has chevrons on the back and front and all that sort of stuff. And that was supposed to be my first version. The second version was a black rooftop with chevrons again, and perhaps different coloured bogies, painted bogies. Then the final version is a bit like a pumpkin, like the Santa Fe pumpkin, with the very deep green and chevrons have disappeared off the back, but they're still on the ploughs. So, so that to me allowed me to have 3 generations of locos that the Pilbara West Coast Mining had, and so coming up with my own little logo, which is a triangle of iron ore in a blue square. My own logo, which is Bragdatio. Bragdatio is the font, and I've got to make sure whenever I get a new computer that Bragdatio is on there, otherwise I can't open up any of my documents. And because I think one of your other guests talked about the issue of how much they paint things, and small railways don't have complicated colour schemes. They keep things simple.
It's definitely a simple, a nice bright orange, which seems to be a safety sort of thing.
Well, orange is my favourite colour, Mitchell. So
you're not alone there.
So that's how that come to be, and yellow complements it well. As you can see, the main numbers on the side of the cab are yellow as well. So they're all custom decals done by a lady in South Australia, and a friend of mine painted the locos for me, and I put them all together, and that's it. Fast forward a little bit, they were all standard DC locos, and then one day I was up on the Gold Coast going to that shop, which I assume still goes Christmas every day.
Yep.
In Southport.
Still there.
Still there. Is he still selling DCC stuff and trains, or is he just gone back to Christmas decorations?
Just Christmas decorations, I think.
Yeah, well, he used to sell model railway stuff, and he was a Digitrax dealer. Anyway, I've got a good friend that lives in Inverell in far north New South Wales, and he said to me, while you're there, can you pick up a DCC system for me from Christmas every day? And anyway, up until then, I just poo-pooed DCC, that it was just a fad, and many of my friends said, it'll never really take off, and I'm not going to have DCC over my dead body. It's not worth it, and all that sort of stuff. all the same issues you now hear about sound and all those sorts of things. Anyway, I went through it all and I saw how tiny the decoders were. And that was the thing that sold me at that point. It was how tiny the decoders were, and they were quite easily fitted into a N-scale loco. So I took the system to my friend in Inverell and dropped it off and told him that I was going to be getting a system as well. And so then I got a system from our dealer here in Melbourne. And it's interesting, the old argument about NCE versus all that sort of Digitracks and, which brand's better and all that sort of stuff. And the truth is they all basically do the same. What generally happens is that whoever the local dealer is, and if they're an N-scale or HO and they sell that, that's what most people end up buying. So, but strangely enough, Victoria seems to be a Digitracks, or was a Digitracks area of excellence. Sydney and its environs was NCE. So, but as we all know, you can use the systems on whatever brand of decoder you got, which is fantastic, So, so the little decoders in here are DZ126s, which are just a tiny, tiny little decoder. No, I do have lighting functions, which I've got to put lights in the locos yet. I haven't got around to doing that. But there's no ditch lights or anything like that. It's just a very, very basic decoder. So, and I swapped over to from DC to DCC. And so that meant pulling the layout apart wiring-wise. So I gutted everything and then spent probably 18 months, 2 years going through, because by geez, it's a difficult task to change from DC to DCC and keep everything reliable and documented and all that sort of stuff. So I reckon I did a 98% job on it. So there's a few little bugs here and there, but I know where they are, and when something plays up, it's generally is that little issue. So I don't think I'll be building another layout. I'm sort of past building layouts and that sort of stuff, but I do want to extend this layout and make it a lot more roomier in the shed, because I think you had a photo there of the room itself.
I believe it's that one there.
1 minute. Yeah. So that's the room itself, which is 8 feet wide by about 17 feet long. So, and over up here is the mine where the cars get loaded. Yep. And down here in this bottom corner is where the rotary dumper is, but there's the main yard of Port Rod-and-Sard. Because I went to DCC, that allowed me to get rid of the control panel that I was going to build for DC, which was going to sit down this end down here.
Down on that shelf.
So that's why, that's why there's a gap there now, because I moved the whole layout further down. So I've got to build them. I've got to extend. I'll build a new module to fit in there, or a new section. And basically, what I want to do is just pull the layout, cut it down the middle there, and move this over to the other side of the shed, and that'll give me lots of room to look and admire the trains. This is a sectional layout. It's to my own standards, and basically a standard module is 2 feet by 4 feet, and it was just arrived at that to make it easy to shift, because believe it or not, this is an exhibition layout, or was intended to be an exhibition layout, because I wanted to go back and reclaim my fame as a good modeler and all that sort of stuff. But once again, as I say, time moves on, and I don't think I'll be doing that. But it does allow, because the layout sits on a timber frame underneath here all the way around. So I can take any section out of the shed and work on it, which means it's great for wiring or fault finding and those sorts of things. And my next endeavour is to take each of the sections out and finish off the signalling system, and tidy up some of those bugs that I was talking about with the wiring, and finish the scenery as I go through on each section. So so that's my little layout, my little bit of the Pilbara. The other thing I'm doing, because like I say, I've gone over that 60 years of age mark, my memory's starting to slip a little bit. So all these boxes here are all catalogued, So if I want to go and find where all the Cato, sorry, not Cato, KD or Microtrains couplers are, I just get my little reference book out and go, oh yes, it's in box G, and I just got to find box G then and confirm that it's got the stuff, and there it is. So and that has been an absolute godsend already for trying to find things. But in the process of but in the process of cataloguing it all, I did find a lot of things I'd forgotten I had. So, it's the old story. You put some stuff over there, you put some other stuff over there. And then when you want to go and use it, you can't remember where you put it. So now at least, all the buildings are together, all the styrene scratch building supplies are together. So it just makes life a lot more logical and easier to deal with. So, because as a good friend of mine said, the reason why when you retire, life goes very quickly is that you're constantly trying to remember where you put things. So, so taking those words of wisdom from him, I thought, I'll catalogue everything. So, yeah, and as you can see, I believe in the black fascia and the black valance up the top there.
Yep.
That's another arguable thing is what colour should you paint the fascia of your railway. The current trend is Dulux Mountain Ash colour, I think it is. It's a grey blacky colour. But look, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. It's what you feel comfortable with. And I mean, the reasoning behind black is that it's supposed to be like a museum quality thing. If you go to a museum, all the fascias are normally black so that the viewer is not distracted by other things. So there's
sort
no
of focus your eyes onto
attention.
The layout.
So there's no pictures on the valance that covers the lighting. That's an air conditioner on the sidewall there, and down the back is an exhaust fan to bring in some fresh air from outside. Fully carpeted with a trip hazard there. Because
I noticed your little
bit
of a step.
Well, it's in a two-car garage, one of those tin shed garages that you buy, you know. And anyway, the floor sloped, the concrete floor in the shed sloped. So I thought, I'll gain a bit of extra headroom. So I put the thing in there, but it's caused a lot of problems over the years with different people because everybody's so busy looking at the layout that they trip over the thing. So if I redo the room, I might actually get rid of that. So, but anyway, time will tell. So it's because I wanted the room that was comfortable to work in, wanted to be in, and it was a pleasant environment. So it's fully carpeted, air conditioned. It is totally sealed from the outside, apart from the fresh air coming in. There's just one door, and it's fully lined with cement sheet and R2.5 bats everywhere. And on a hot day in Melbourne, the shed inside the room is 10 degrees cooler than the ambient temperature outside. Bearing in mind that the shed would be hotter anyway inside because of the nature of the shed. So, and then chuck on the air conditioning, and it soon becomes very, very comfortable. So, needless to say, during winter, I don't need to worry about heating the shed or heating the train room, because all my lighting is incandescent lighting. And I've done that because I wanted to be able to have dimmable lights. But now with LED strip lighting, I'm going to probably pull that out and put in the LED lights, because I'm quite impressed with how LED lighting has come along. So, yeah, when the room's operational, I think there's about nearly 3 kilowatts of lighting sitting up in the thing, and of daylight globes and just normal pearl globes. And I actually have put a band of LED lights in to get a blue correction, and geez, the difference between the three is unbelievable. It really does make the layout just pop like it looks. So this is the wharf, Port Ronsard down here. So brass etchings that a friend of mine does. Once again, I've got to finish that off. This is going to be the sea here.
Yep.
And these are my rotary coupled hopper carts, which I just happen to have here as well. And
if I can zoom in.
They are a little bit unusual in that, as you can see in the middle there, just there is a bulbous thing. Well, that's a fishing swivel, all the way from Kmart. And I learned a long time ago that if you take the guts out of the coupler box, get rid of the coupler gland and all that sort of stuff, there's a pin inside the coupler box, and if you file a bit off the fishing swivel, lo and behold, it fits in. So the next thing was to get a rotary dumper that could pivot around that point as the centre of axis. And no, I just realised, Mitchell, I haven't taken a photo of the rotary dumper.
I was going to say, I'm not sure there's a photo on here.
I think there's a general photo. You might see it in the general photo. Just go back to our photos. It'll be this one here. This one here.
This one?
Yeah.
Would that be no?
No, this one here.
There.
That one. There it is. There's the dumper there. So it's a 2-car dumper, and a good friend of mine built that for me back in 1986. And I did have another little dumper before that he made out of an old clock. We wore it out. So this is a 2-car dumper, and actually the whole mechanism, that whole assembly there, you can actually pick it up and take it away, because all the operational business is underneath the layout. There's a rack and pinion system that drives the drum over, and so it spins towards us. That's right, yes. So it comes over this way, comes around here, stops, and then it goes back. And it'll take 2 cars. And if you put the cars in the dumper correctly, the rotary coupler will sit here and sit here. And you just got to remember that the last car that's connected to the loco has to be disconnected from the loco.
Otherwise, you have a nice little accident.
Yes, there's a magnetic coupler down here, and so you just push it in what they call the delayed position of the end scale couplers, and push it in there, and Bob's your uncle. Another cunning thing I did here was that I actually have some switching locos, and they're B36-7s, which I think once again is a general photo somewhere. Where the mine?
Those two.
Yeah, there they are. Yeah. Haven't got road numbers on it yet, and so that's why I've got a number on it. But they're my switches, and they're the Atlas B36-7s, and they run absolutely beautifully as slow speed runners, and quite old now as well. So what happens is that the decoder, there's a decoder on the dumper and a decoder on the loader, and both of them are set up to got the same address as the locos that switch. So this is loco 3602 and its mate. And so if you select 3602 and have it on your throttle, and then press the I think it's function 2, I think it is, which causes a relay to operate and makes the dumper or the loader operate for the respective locos that are controlling that area. So it means that no one else can, apart from the person who's driving the switches, can operate the dumper or the loco. So there's 2 of these little blokes up at the mine, 3601, and so the mine's geared for set up for. There's one of them there because I got the other one here. So they are just fantastic little locos. So yes, in here, that's where the motor sits there. There's an big old half-inch drill bit sits in there, and it's just a spur gear off the cam motor driving the shaft. It sits in a V trough, and all this is iron ore that's held in the hopper, and all it does is basically pull the iron ore, or push the iron ore, sorry, through a little hole in the bottom of the hopper, across to a hole just here, and fills up the cars here. So it's a live loads layout, which has its problems. for obvious reasons.
Derailments,
when you have a derailment.
But
yes, when you have derailments.
But you're just dealing with the same problems that the real railroads do.
Yes. At least my derailments don't cost millions of dollars and end up on the news and all that sort of stuff. But look, have a vacuum cleaner handy with a pair of pantyhose down the nozzle, and you'll soon pick up any little errant iron ore pieces along the way. So, and my wife bought me for Christmas, which was really, really cute, a little, like a garden vac.
Yep.
But it's the size of no bigger than the palm of your hand, and it runs on just a AAA battery. And I looked at it, and when I pulled it out on Christmas Day, and I looked at it, and I've gone, I've already got a garden vac. And she goes, no, you haven't. I said, yeah, I've got one for the garden. She said, this isn't for the garden, this is for the train. And then it dawned on me, I just didn't realise. It was, like I say, the size of the palm of your hand. And yeah, it's a little garden vac. So you press it and it blows iron ore around everywhere and all that sort of stuff. So I was very touched by that. It was a great present. So you might notice too, I love palm trees. So that's one of the good things about having a freelance layout, Mitch, is that you can do whatever turns your fancy.
Oh, that's
and yeah, and I've collected different matchbox models over the years and from different people and all that sort of stuff. So so I've still got a lot of things to do because this layout is 32 years old. And that's another reason why I won't be exhibiting it, because it doesn't hold up against the modern layouts that are out there today for N-scale and HO and that sort of stuff. It's very old-fashioned in its approach. All the track work is Shinohara track, and which is no longer commercially available.
I was going to say, I don't think I've heard of them
Shinohara.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen their N-scale stuff.
When Japan was a big manufacturer back in the 70s with brass locos and all that sort of stuff, Shinohara were well and truly up there. And actually, the Walthers HO track is based on the Shinohara same sort of system, but in HO. But anyway, the reason why I went for Shinohara was that they had a lot of curved turnouts. So you can see a curved turnout in the background there. Three-way turnouts, number 6s and number 4s. They had Ys. They just had a multitude of different trackage that you don't normally get in. There's a three-way turnout there that you don't get in Pico and that sort of stuff. So, so it was Shinohara track, and it can be a bit bullish looking, as Shinohara track, but being a mining railroad, they normally have large, heavy-duty trackage. So, and like I said before, if you look at the whole thing as an overall thing, you're not going to be looking at the railhead. You'll be looking at everything else, So, but if so anyway, Shinohara track, and laid on cork roadbed. It's code 80 track, and there is still some of it available. Bergs in Sydney still have a bit left over in their stock there, but all the point motors or turnout motors are tortoises. I did have some of the DCC concept motors, which was a terrible mistake because the first lot that they brought out were very, very unreliable and kept failing. So as they now, I've still got some on the layout, but as they fail, I tend to put in tortoises. So, and they're all controlled by JMRI, the software program. Yep. And I'm in the process, a friend of mine who we call Dr. Digitrax, he's a computer programmer, operator. He is going to put together a Raspberry Pi for me. So I've got the little Raspberry Pi electronic device because I really don't need a proper computer to run the layout. I just need a computer that can run the JMRI system and allow me to program the locos and that sort of stuff. So, this building here is going to be the powerhouse. They're all epoxy cast motors, which you can't see. It's going to be the substation there. During COVID what are we, 2019? 2020. COVID 2020, I built this from scratch, which is a bucket wheel reclaimer. Once again, there was a few trial stop-start efforts in getting it right, but I'm very, very pleased with how it's turned out. I've just got to finish the bottom section off, and there you can see, if you can zoom in on that, Mitchell, that's a 3D printed conveyor.
Right,
the guy in the guy in Western Australia did for me. They are commercially available on his website if anybody's interested. So all you got to do is paint it, obviously, but put a conveyor belt in it and build some stands for it, put some walkway along the side and some handrails, and there you got a conveyor. So there's one of those inside there. I don't know if you can sort of see it a little bit. And one of the things that, because I come from a trade background, everything in life has a purpose. But one of the things when you're modelling is you don't have to justify everything for having a purpose. Does that make sense or not make sense?
Yeah.
What I'm saying is
I
that
get where you're going.
Yeah, this building at the back here, which is the switch room and all that sort of stuff. If you can just zoom in again, thanks, Mitch. I thought, what am I going to do to sort of make it a bit interesting looking?
That little one there?
Yeah, that one there. So it's got a bit of ductwork on the side. There's a cylinder, white metal cylinder on the side there. There's an air conditioner at the back here, a bit more air conditioning. And yes, and there's handrails and a gate so that they can, crane lift off any parts out of the switch room and all that sort of stuff. And so, but not very logical at all. But once it's painted, and it just fits the whole thing of how industrial equipment looks. It just bits and pieces hanging out everywhere. So, and that's going to be the stockpiles there. They're the rails for having the bucket wheel reclaimer run on along there.
Yep.
And over on this side will be the actual stacker. Once again, we'll run on rails and stack the profile for the ore piles. And then I've got to build up. I've got a whole heap of these conveyor assemblies, and I'm going to then make up an arrangement and put a ship loader in here. Another good friend built me a ship. It's not to scale. It's a representation called the Western Enterprise, and it's actually got a hole in the bottom so that the ore can actually come out on the conveyor and go down through the hole in the bottom and collect in the hopper underneath to look like it's loading the ship. So, so once again, you get, like I said, I am a freelance modeler, but I'm modeling the concept more so than the actual trying to replicate anything specifically. So, because I certainly like dealing with machinery and those sorts of things, and but the hobby certainly allows you to do that. So, there's a picture of the engine shed or the workshop, if you want to call it. It's a workshop. There it is there.
Nice.
That's some of those micro-engineering buildings that have been put together. But I, put concrete on the bottom, tilt slab concrete fabrication, a veranda and air vents and all that sort of stuff, downpipes, just to finish it all off. So that's totally finished. That are the only three buildings on the layout that are totally on this one down here that are totally finished. So because I've worked out how you can put gutters on end scale, and it looks quite realistic. So and downpipes and that sort of stuff, and it just adds to it. So because being in an area where there's high rainfall, when there's a cyclone and that sort of stuff, the drains are very, very big. And I saw that firsthand one year when I was on holidays in Cairns, and they had a downpour, and because I was amazed at the size of the downpipes at the motel we were staying at. Well, sure enough, when it rained, did it rain
down up there. We were actually up there recently. I'm not sure if I've told you, I'm actually in drilling now.
Yes.
And one of our jobs was up in Palmer River, and we flew in and out of Cairns. And we were in Cairns one night, and it just absolutely chucked it down.
Yes.
And yeah, I can definitely vouch for that. That yeah, the water
it's like
flows.
a fire hose when it's coming out. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, my friend who does the brass etchings and that sort of stuff, he also had some bronze point motors made, and so that's them there. Once again, no specific model, just a shape. And what I've done to make life easier for myself is that each decoder, so that's point number 23, little indicator on there, so I can, from the Digitrack throttle, I can throw that turnout over, and you can see the tortoise throw arm coming up through there. One of the downsides of Shinohara is that it is a very large gap between the movable rail and the stock rail. Yeah, look, it's like I say, for what it was in its time, it was the best I could get. Yellow sleepers, you might see them occasionally. They're the fouling marks on the where I can leave rolling stock without it fouling anything. Micro trains uncoupler, magnetic uncoupler there, and I was very, very fortunate. I didn't finish telling the story about the ore cars. They're all 33-foot double bay, 2-bay hoppers made by, back in the 1970s, they were made by KD. And then KD decided to go more into N scale, and the brothers did their stuff, KD brothers, and so N scale micro trains started. So, but if you turn over some of these and look on the bogies on the bottom, they actually say KD. So they're very, very old. So they're been there since 1976 when I first got them. Not all of them, just some of them. And the reason why I got them was that particular model, and it's still available now, the little doors at the bottom of the car actually open. And we first thought that we might be able to build a machine that opened up the doors of the hopper car. But then we did a bit more research and thought that's a bit hard, and also the rotary dumper had become known to us, and so that's when my friend decided to build the rotary dumper. So and what the cars, so there's, once again, can you see that, Mitch, or can we get back to that camera? So that is the car, and you can see the little doors underneath, but it's got a skirt on it. Not because it's female, but because it's to hide the fact that those hopper bays are underneath there. And each hopper bay has 30 pieces of lead shot in it, and then there's a false floor in the bottom of the, I've got a bit of iron ore in here, so I just got to be careful, but there's a false floor in there which hides the bottom of the hopper, and that is the car. So once again, custom decals on the piece of rolling stock, all individually numbered, and you might have noticed that particular car had a red triangle, and what that means is that, and there's one there actually, I can just see there's a red triangle there. That is the number one. Right? Yep, number one. There's 20 cars in a string, and they're 2 10-car sets. So there's 4 cars in that train that have a red triangle, and they are the start and finish of the 10-car set. It just makes it easier when you're splitting the train to know, without having to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can just look for the red mark and do it. And they also have truck retaining springs to stop that problem you have with, well, certainly in N scale, you have a big problem with cars hunting as they run along with the springs in the coupler boxes. So it's got truck retaining springs on it. So yeah, you actually fill the train up full of iron ore and off you go. So this train here is ready to depart with 2 locos on the point, and it will run along the layout and up to the mine and go through the balloon loop, and then the switches will come on and take over the train and load the train with iron ore. So so what I'm going to do up here, that's what the stockpile will look like. I'm going to make a conical stockpile here, which they do for allowing the trains to drive in underneath and fill in there. But that won't be an operating thing. That'll just be a static model with this cone of iron ore sitting
Oh,
up
where
here.
the
Where the Armaco
yeah,
tunnel is.
Tunnel is.
Yeah. So, but this is the actual real loader here. So, once again, I need to finish this off and paint it and all that sort of stuff. But now I'm retired. There's no excuse.
Yeah, you got the time to now.
Yes, if only. But anyway, so yeah, look, it's once again, my friend Vic, who does the brass etchings and all that sort of stuff, he built this bridge for me. Once again, it's just a freelance design. It's sort of following proper bridge conventions, and it's over 2 foot long, 600 mil long, and it's got 2 big plastruct I-beams that are laminated together. And when it got built, the stress in laminating plastic together, it would bend. So Vic's from an engineering background, so he machined down a piece of solid steel, and it sits down through the guts of the bridge. That you can't, not that you can see it, but that stops the bridge from warping. But you can look very carefully. You can see that the shoes for riding on the
left
piers,
side there.
yeah, they're just sitting up a little bit high. Something's obviously moved over the time, but anyway, it's an impressive bridge, and it just adds. Because in the Pilbara, to get to, well, there's a number of bridges up there. There's a steel arch bridge. There's also the Rogue River pylon bridge, and there's also lots of Armco tunnel type bridges for floodways and that sort of stuff. So it's an area where you can really go to town if you wanted to. But the track plan is something that I came up with myself. Designed to fit into this space, and you can. Like, this was the original layout from 1976, based on the 101 track plans, which I pulled out of storage tonight. And that's it there. As you can see, it's got the sticky tape down the side, and I'll tell you what, there's still some great plans in here. And if anybody was getting into model railways, it's still a wonderful book. I think it has been revised over the years, but it is a wonderful book. But it's this particular plan here, plan number 45, Superior and Iron Range Railroad, that got me into iron ore mining. Nothing else. So because my friends who were helping me, because I was only 16 at the time when I was building the layout and had just joined the club in Shepparton, they showed me what to do and how to do, and that's why I always encourage anybody to join a club, because they're the people who will be able to help you and guide you through the development of your railway. And I've often said to people over the years, Mitchell, that we all follow the same path. It's just that we follow it a bit differently.
Yeah.
Some people go straight from A to B. Other people do that, but they zigzag along the way and get distracted and all that sort of stuff. And I suppose somewhat similar to yourself, your journey's been very distorted over the time with N scale and a multi-deck layout and planning and all that sort of stuff. And now you're into HO and hoping to build a HO layout. So, but at the end of the day, everybody has to lay track at some point. You've got to build framework, of course, and all that sort of stuff. And look, things have changed. I think if I was going to build a new layout, I'd build it out of aluminium tubing and styrene, solid, 2-inch or 3-inch foam, and go from there. Because one thing that my colleagues have learnt is that, especially in N scale, you don't need huge, wide layouts. If you only model a foot wide or 300 millimetres wide and a track down the centre, you've got more than enough room to model the right of way and some fencing and trees and that sort of stuff. You don't need acres and acres and acres. And the other thing that people don't realise is it costs a lot of money to do scenery, or can cost a lot of money to do scenery. And if you don't have to scenic a lot of stuff, you can come back to having something that's very, very minimal. And so what I'm going to do when I actually split this layout down the middle and push it apart is that I'll be just going back to 1 foot wide scenery. and making some transition pieces to fit in. But yes, these are 2 foot wide, and of course the other thing is 2 foot's about as far as you can reach reliably with your hand when it's stretched out. But you've got to fit your yards in and those sorts of things. And this layout was actually governed by, when it was built back in 32 years ago, this balloon loop up here is on a 12-inch curve, and that was considered generous, because up until then 6, 7, 8, 9-inch curves were considered the norm, whereas nowadays 12 inch is considered tight. This is in my opinion. An 18-inch or even 24-inch is considered to be the more generous. So that curve there is 12-inch. So once you do that, you start to all of a sudden work out, geez, I don't have a lot of room because I've got, it's 2 foot there and 2 foot there, and that's 4 foot, so, and you've got to have room to get past the layout and all that sort of stuff. And if you just go back to the general overview picture, sure, for us. So that's over 4 feet wide, and hence the reason why it goes back in a bit there. But these are 2 foot wide. And this particular section here is very interesting. I did when I drew the track plan, I only drew the main line, and I thought I'll work the yard out later on. In this particular yard, the main yard, and there's actually that photo there, Mitch, if you can get into that one there. You can see the yard is in a funny profile.
Sort of does a big S-curve, doesn't it?
Yeah, it comes in and goes around and goes there, and it heads off to the dumper down there, and then the tail lead of the dumper is down there, and that finishes right in the very back corner. And the reason why I did that was because that gave me the maximum yard length
there, isn't it?
Yeah, because my trains are 10-car, 2 10-car units. From there to the very end is 10 cars long, and that's a 20-car train in there at the time being. So, and a 20-car train with 2 locos is 6 feet long. So all of a sudden, you can see that space starts to get gobbled up very, very quickly. And so when I was designing it, I left the yard to the very end, and the only way I could get everything in that I wanted to do was to put this funny S shape through. And one of the things that people tell you when you're designing layouts is you should try to eliminate having parallel trackage with the edge, have as many angles and all that sort of stuff as you possibly can. And that's what you see here. That's a glass thing to protect the edge of the layout. But everything's set at an angle, and it just adds a whole new perspective to it. So as you can see there's some low relief buildings on the backdrop there. And they provide some operating capabilities for me in terms of being able to spot cars. It just, the whole thing just becomes a little bit more believable because it's not all regimentally at right angles to everything else. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like it's a bit more organic in how it's sort of come along. It's not like the real, like up in the Pilbara, that they had all that space and stuff, and they just sort of did things willy-nilly in a way.
Yes.
Like, oh, we need this here, and then that pops up, and like you get a lot of, like, at least for me, going to different mine sites, you see things kind of just sort of grow. They don't, it's not really like, oh, we're going to doing this here, this here, this here. Like Melbourne, for example, with all its grids.
Yes.
That's very structured and regimented, but a lot of in the mining industry, a lot of it's just grown, and as things have been replaced and that sort of thing, it does sort of look a bit less organized, but
it's organized chaos. And if you look at the aerial views, like where they store all the dump trucks and that, because they're big units in their own right. But all they do is they just bulldoze an area, put up some 44-gallon drums or whatever, and a bit of bunting, and that becomes the car park for the dumpers, and it's just out in the middle of nowhere sort of thing. And if they want to have a stockpile somewhere, they just, once again, they just bulldoze a bit more of the area that's on their lease. And certainly not an area where they're going to mine in the future, but just that superfluous area that they have. And so, so that's one of the things I like about this layout, is that nothing is regimented in its approach, So my father-in-law was a retired Victorian Railways person, and one thing he said to me was that the railways don't do unnecessary things. And you watch people build layouts nowadays, and some people put a lot of trackage in and that sort of stuff. Real railways don't do that. They put in the most minimal amount they can get away with, because once again, I think you spoke about one of your other colleagues in the podcast, Mitchell, that it all becomes money.
Yeah.
Maintenance. And maintenance is a black hole. No one likes to spend money on maintenance. Just like we don't like to spend getting our car maintained, but we have to, and that sort of stuff for reliability. And so the railways will not do something because it might be a good idea. It's they only do it if it's really, 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 really necessary. So minimal trackage as best you can, and keeping it simple but operationally correct is the way to go. Speaking of operation, you might notice there's some pink tabs on those cars there. That's pink post-it notes. Because these are. We talked about the journey before of model railroaders, and one of the areas you go through as you get more experience is operations. And when I built the layout, of course, operations was the furthest thing from my mind, but having been exposed to operating layouts, and I was at an operating session on Friday night, just gone actually, on a big American N-scale layout here in Melbourne. Fantastic night. And so operations are important. So because as much as it's fun filling these cars up with iron ore and dumping them and all that sort of stuff, the operations needs logistical support to keep it going in terms of materials, supplies, fuel, all those sorts of things.
Yep.
And Mitch, you've probably noticed in going out into the Never Land that the amount of stuff you got to take with you.
Yeah, because obviously out in the middle of nowhere, you've got to have supplies of everything. Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things people don't realise, the general public, is they don't realise just how much logistical work goes in for something to happen. It's just massive. And sadly, we got the war in the Ukraine at the time being, and that's one of the things that's brought the Russians undone, from what I've been told, is that they've run out of fuel and supplies for the men, and they're just ground to a halt, because...
the Ukrainian farmers dragging Russian tanks around, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So here we've got, obviously containers sitting on the wharf that have been unloaded. There's one of those power units that I was talking about for my power station.
Yep.
A tank car here, and you can see that they're brown box cars. There's a Defco dump car, tilts on its side. There's a yellow box car over there. So they're all these are all going to be individually numbered, with nice big numbers so that I can read them without my glasses on. And so my operating thing. And I'm still trying to work out whether I use a card system or a switch list. And it's most likely going to be a switch list. And we'll say, take car number 15 and place it at door 2A in the port Ronside yard, and then I'd take tank car number 15 up to the fuel point, and unload the fuel or pick up fuel here at the tanks and take it up to the mine and unload it up there. So all those sorts of things, and so it just gives another twist on things. This here is a log train that Rolf has brought out, but I'm going to use it as a rail train. And so I was experimenting there with some polystyrene shape and some blue tack to see if it would run happily through the curves. And as much as I did that, it came to my attention last year through COVID, there's a guy in the States who has made a rail train and in HO, and the whole thing bends. And I
think I've seen that too,
I've not been able to find out what the rail is. I've got a feeling it might be a rubber, like, the windscreen wiper on your car.
Yeah.
I think it might be something along those lines, But anyway, what I found was if this is secured down here, this will run quite happily, and it's interesting as it goes through the bends. Yeah, these expand and contract and move and all that sort of stuff, just like the real rail train does, you know. So, and I think if I paint them rail brown, no one's ever going to know that it's not actually the shape of a piece of rail, and that'll be my rail train. So, yeah.
That's the thing with you look at like mining railways and you think, oh, they just, you know, hauling coal or hauling ore, but there's so much other sort of operations that go in behind it. Like, as you've just said, the like fuel supplies, you know, this, that, and everything else that they need to take out to the mines. But then, yeah, you've also got keeping the actual railway running. So you need to look at things like the maintenance of way, rail, ballast, you know, all that other extra stuff on top of it.
Yeah, well, for those people who aren't aware, the Pilbara is really an area on its own up in the, like I say, the northwest section of Western Australia.
Yeah.
And it certainly has Port Hedland and Dampier. It has wharf facilities. So all the new locos and that arrive are actually brought in by ship, by heavy lift ship.
Yep.
And yeah, they're lifted off, and then they go to the workshop to be stripped down and fixed up, ready for going into service. And then they go into service. And strangely enough, there was a loco shortage in the Pilbara there for a while, and I think it was Mount Newman, or was it Hammersmith? I can't remember now, but they ended up getting locos off the shelf, so to speak. That it was BNSF who didn't want the loco.
Yep.
So a BNSF loco ended up in the Pilbara.
Yeah.
As is, you know, and so I can argue then that yes, we've bought a second-hand or brought an off-the-shelf new loco that UP didn't want, and I've got it, you know. So, and this is what, like I say, one of the joys about being freelance. You can sort of come up with any story, so long as it's got some sort of plausibility. It can be quite believable. So, but look, one of the things I mentioned early in the piece was that having the family look, or the PR side of things, you know, and here we see it, you know, the two locos are the same, but they are individually numbered. They've got different coloured bogies and that sort of stuff, and I think they've both got the black tops on them. Each of the cars is individually numbered, individually weathered. I haven't weathered the locos yet. And the yellow band replicates or indicates where the rotary coupler is, so that people know, you know, where to place it. And there has been cases where cars have gone into the dumper, both on my railway and also in reality, where it hasn't gone too well because the wagon's only gone half in or whatever, or they've picked the wrong coupler. So there's that triangle mark I was talking about before. So, but what I'm saying is, Mitchell, that you're getting the appearance. You know what I mean? You're getting that it all looks like it belongs.
Yeah.
Even though it's freelanced, it's all my idea, blah blah blah. But it looks like it's
looked like, yeah, it could be something that, like, if you head up to the Pilbara, well, you might find it.
Yes, and that's what I liked about your stuff, you know. And this particular loco here is the 100-year anniversary loco, which you did. As you can see, the 100 years of it's back to front.
Yeah, that was for 2012 because I set the start date as like 1912. And yeah, there's, you know, little milestones that you can celebrate along the way.
The centenary. So can't get it to be the right way of the writing, unfortunately. But yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
That's a great idea. You know, it's the history and all that sort of stuff. And you go, geez, they've been around for 100 years, you know, and all that sort of stuff. And so, and your other loco too, your ST40, it's orange, but it's still got the same company name, but a shortened version. This one's the GDRM Co, whereas this one over here is
got the iron ore.
GDR and Co. iron ore.
Yeah.
So it just brings it all together and makes it feel like it's part of the family.
Like that's obviously you've listened to the other podcasts. I think it's talking to Patrick, and we we're talking about like you look at the history of it and you kind of try and build that into it as well. So it's not like, oh, just if we're modeling today, you've just got today. It's like, oh no, but when did it start? Sort of what's happened over the years that's led to where you are today.
Yeah, well, the Utah Beltline's the guy in the States that runs that. I mean, he just constantly has new locos, the current locos, and keeps upgrading. And yeah, geez, it'd be nice to do something like that, but where does it all stop? So remember, he who has the most locos when he dies wins. So, but one of the problems with freelancing is that you've got to make the decisions and the stories and concepts and all that sort of stuff. Whereas if you're modelling Santa Fe prototype or Queensland Railways or whatever, at least you can go to a book and see how the station designs were or the colour schemes were or whatever, what rolling stock they had and that sort of thing. Whereas when you're freelancing, you've got to make all those decisions yourself.
Yeah, and you can kind of go to it from an approach of like, oh, I'll just get whatever I like, whatever I think looks cool. And it's like, yep, that's fine. There's a lot of people that find their happiness in that. But then there's also when you're trying to have something that like looks believable, then it's, you've kind of got to build some standards.
Yeah, and look, that's one of the things that you see with people who get into model railways. When they first get into it, they buy anything and everything, whatever scale they're in, And you even see some people who buy American and English and Australian and just mix it all together. And that's fine. But then eventually it slowly dawns on them that, this is all not quite right. And so then their natural allegiance comes to the forefront and they go, I'm going to model American or I'm going to model Australian or whatever the case may be. And certainly if I was starting again, I would model Australian mainline locos because the amount of stuff that's available now in Australia in N-scale is just phenomenal. And there's a podcast that comes out every month by a guy by the name of Will James on YouTube. And I just get blown away every month when I watch that because the amount of HO stuff that's coming out that is Australian based is just staggering. Absolutely staggering.
That's pretty much what sold me on moving to HO because I was like, oh, I want to do it with Australian stuff. And at the time it was, a lot of it was HO that was coming out and I was like, all right, there we go. But yeah, I'm starting to get a bit jealous now seeing a lot of the N-scale stuff that's coming along.
Yes. Well, the beauty of N-scale, like I say, is that you can have lots of track to scenery ratio can be good, or scenery to track ratio can be good. But it's whatever you want out of it. Do you want operation? And I've seen layouts where there's no scenery, no buildings. It's just timber and track.
Good old plywood Pacific.
Yeah, and they're happily running operations and all that sort of stuff. Now, if they're happy with that, that is fine. But as I say, we all go down the same journey at some point in life with model railways, and it's just interesting. And the other thing that my fellow modelers talk about is it about having a finished model railroad when you get to the end, or is it about the journey? And I think we've all come together in unison and said that it's about the journey. And so even if I don't finish this railway before I shuffle off this earth, the pleasure it's brought me over the years, and as I say, it's 32 years old like it is now, and I would like to finish it, but I'm not going to be too distressed.
Yeah, you're not rushing your way towards trying to have a finished product.
No, and once again, you see a lot of people go, oh, I've got to get the layout done, I've got to do this, and I've got to do that. But one thing COVID's taught us, I think, is just we all have to understand, or we've all come to understand that, family and friends are very, very important, and that should always take precedence over model railways. Model railways is a hobby. It's not a living. It's not a business. It's a hobby for you and me,
Yeah.
and it shouldn't take up 99% of your time. So not every day anyway.
Yeah, well, let's face it, it's meant to be something we get enjoyment out of. Like,
Yes,
you know,
yes. So
there's a few people out there that get enjoyment out of their jobs, but you don't want to.
look, once again, you go through a lifestyle where stages of life where you're working everything. You yourself, you're working to get more money, or to get more opportunities, to get a house and get a family and all that sort of stuff. And same thing, we all go down that same path as well, And I'm sure if I was to sit down with the Mitchell who I met in the Southport Hotel all those years ago, back in 2015, and said to him, "What are you going to be doing in 10 years' time, Mitch?"
I never would have said drilling.
No,
never.
No. You probably wouldn't have said you'd been married either, and all that sort of stuff, So, so we're funny creatures, humans. It's a great journey, and look, it's been great to be able to share with you some of my thoughts. And there'll be people who disagree with what I've said on some of the things. So, as the old saying goes, it's in my opinion only. And some people might go, "Geez, this is a bit basic and a bit sad." Like I say, it's 32 years old. So model railways has come a long way, and this operating night I was at on Friday night has the absolute latest and greatest in computer control and all that sort of stuff, and it is fantastic. There's no denying. I started life with a clockwork train set, then I went to an electric train set, and I thought I was the bee's knees, and running around in a circle and all that sort of stuff. And then slowly but surely the bug bites deeper, and N-scale came along in my formative years. And so I remember the first N-scale loco I got was a Santa Fe F7, the war bonnet scheme, second hand. And it's just a fascinating journey everybody has that's in model railways, of where they've come from and where they're going to. And there's not too many of us who get out of the hobby. Most people stay in the hobby over the years and keep pursuing their endeavours. And I know people who have sold their N-scale layouts, and they've built narrow gauge layouts, and now they're building a HO layout. So same process, just different scale.
Yep, that's it. It's like
that's probably. Sorry.
It's like the love for just trains in general is really what brings us all together, I think.
And that's why a lot of people won't listen or watch N-scale stuff or read about N-scale stuff because I'm a HO modeler, or I'm an O-scale modeler or whatever. But every scale has its intrinsic little things that you have to do for that scale. But then the scenery you do in HO is the same as you do in N-scale. A little bit different, but basically it's the same, and the same for O-scale. And obviously the bigger you get, the more finer detail you can get. And as we can see there in that picture, you can't see, obviously because it's a photo anyway, but at the end of the bridge, which is 600 millimetres away, it blurs into the distance, and that's what you see with your own eyes if you're standing. You can't see forever and ever and ever. So you don't need big trains or anything like that. I mean, to see a 6-foot train running along with 20 ore cars, no, it doesn't come to your mind. You go, well, that's incorrect. That train should be 2 kilometres long.
Where'd the other 220 cars go?
Yes, they ran off by themselves and derailed somewhere. But I do have a BLMI sound loco, Paragon 3 with the
one of the AC60s.
Yes, so that's very nice to have. So and I even found in my box of bits and pieces Hammersley Iron Loco, which has never ran, so the Centric. So I've got 2 of those. So I do want to set up my Pilbara Historical Society, when I expand the layout. And this layout that I was operating on Friday night, he has a little Atlas S2 loco with sound chip in it, and it sounded absolutely gorgeous. And
it's
the guy I was driving,
it's amazing where sound has come with N-Scale.
oh, that's right. Like I say, there was people who said I wouldn't have DCC, and then there's people who said I wouldn't have sound. And yeah, I've only got a few sound locos because none of the Pilbara Cab locos have got sound or anything like that. And you don't really want to have a whole shed full of bloody locos rumbling away in the background. It just gets very, very annoying after a while. But it is nice to have one or two that you're driving and have got sound coming out of it. So
yeah, like modeling our little taking our little toys into being a bit more of a railroad modeling.
Yes, yeah. So, and there was a time when animation was poo-pooed as well. And there's been people who go, "Oh, yes, what you do with loading your trains and that sort of stuff, that's a bit silly and a bit childish." But animation now is becoming more to the forefront with electronics and Arduino controllers and those sorts of things. So who knows where the hobby will go over the next few years.
Yeah, it's like you've said, like the layout's 32 years old. So just in there's a huge amount of change in the hobby, and it's like, well, where are we going to be in the next 32 years?
Yes, yeah, well, the 101 track plan book here was done by a gentleman by the name of Lynn Westcott. And if you've been in the hobby for any period of time, Lynn Westcott was a leader in the field of developments of model railways with throttles and that sort of stuff. And so and all these track plans in here are his doing. So yeah, and there's lots of people like that, that have come along over the years and will continue to come along, that will be leaders of the hobby.
Yep, that's it.
Yeah, pushing the envelope.
So, as we always need to. Like you just can't really stand still without things happening in the hobby. That's for sure.
Well, you look at how cars have developed over the years, and I know you have an interest in cars, Mitch. So, the cars, you look at the Model T versus what we drive now, and there's bloody Teslas everywhere down here in Melbourne. So, given the way fuel prices are at the time being.
Oh, they're starting to look a bit, looking a bit better at the moment.
Yes. So, and of course, the government's mad keen on us all driving electric cars by 2030. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens. And look, funny talking about that. The Pilbara is to get battery locomotives.
That's Rio Tinto and BHP. Did Fortescue get in that as well?
Yeah. And Gina, she's got her swag as well. And the concept being that the mine's at the top of the hill, and as they go down to the port, they will regeneratively charge the batteries, but they will have a prime mover driven loco available for just in case. And then on the way back up to the hill, up to the mine, they'll use the batteries to pull the train up. So they're looking at huge reduction in carbon usage and that sort of stuff. So yes, it's interesting technology. So and there's a guy who has 3D printed those locos in N-scale already. The Wabtec, WABTEC is the name of the loco that company that's doing it.
And that was the former General Electric, I believe.
Sorry?
That was formerly General Electric.
Yes.
They became Wabtec.
Yeah. So if I can get my hands on one of these 3D printed things, I'll be very keen. So
keep West Coast mining up with the times.
Well, and like I was saying before, you just keep pushing the envelope, and that's one of the problems if you stick to a certain era and go, well, I'm only going to model from 1960 to 1980 or whatever. If you get those boundaries set, it makes it very, very hard to explore those new opportunities that come along. So, but when you're freelancing, you can do anything.
That's it. It's,
So maybe on that note, Mitch, we'll call it quits at that, because that's
I think we're at a good
lots
point
to think about.
Yeah, and I
It'll be
might have to
interesting
get
to
you on
see.
again. I'll get you on
It'll be
again
interesting
soon,
to
and we'll see how
see.
we go.
Yes, it'll be interesting to see if anybody has any questions or suggestions or whatever.
We seem to have a dedicated group that sort of have their say now and again on the podcast. So
Yep.
we'll see what comes of it.
The layout's not operational at the time being, but I can certainly, once it is going, I will get some video of the cars being loaded and dumped,
Yep.
and a bit of an explanation. So it'll just be a video with an iPhone. That's all it is. So nothing too special. Because I'm not a photographer by any stretch of the imagination. And so that'll be an interesting thing to go through as well. So,
well, thanks for your time, and
my pleasure.
We'll definitely have to get you on again soon.
Yes, and you've lost a few more hair follicles since I first met you as well.
Yeah, it's chasing the back of my head.
It's part of being a model railroader is having no hair.
I think my hair saw yours and was like, "Oh, that's a good idea."
Oh, every morning I get out of bed and I count how many hair follicles are on my pillow.
Well,
so yes,
with that,
all the best and stay safe.
Certainly will. Thank you. And,
all the best, Mitchell.
As I've been saying, passenger trains are done. Good night.